Alright, so Bernie Sanders' nice new tweet is actually sort of funny if it wasn't so sad. As you can see, he's saying that prices have gone up significantly in these areas: education, food, healthcare, housing, and transportation. And then he adds, we need college for all, Medicare for all, and jobs for all if millennials are going to have a fair shot at a decent standard of living. Now, all he needs to do is ask himself one simple question. In nearly all of these areas over the past several decades, has government involvement increased or decreased? Have there been new taxes born in these areas? Have regulations, licensing monopolies, unions in bed with the government, price controls, subsidies, guaranteed loans from the federal government, restrictions and higher barriers to entry into the marketplace from the government? Have there been any of these things? Well, of course there have been. These industries are rife with this nonsense, and every single one of these government actions have put upward pressure on prices, not to mention inflation and the increased money supply from the Federal Reserve. But let's just take a look at food, for example, which isn't quite as regulated as healthcare or education, but it still has a fair amount of state intervention in it. But relatively speaking, it's not as dire as healthcare or education. But that being said, let's take a look at an example of government intervention into the food industry. In 2009, cherry farmers were forced by the government to dump 30 million pounds of cherries on the ground. Basically, farmers were forced to destroy their crops. Now, this type of intervention began during the Great Depression in a government-led effort to protect farmers. Government would pay farmers not to grow crops and leave their land unused, or to destroy their crops or let them rot. Farmers would receive a check for their land they intentionally left fruitless, both figuratively and literally. Now, why would government do this? Well, the less food on the market, the more expensive it becomes, and the more money farmers may potentially make. Okay, good for them, but it screws over everyone in society. The same thing might be seen today with avocados, for example. The tariffs Trump may place on Mexico could severely limit the amount of avocados on the market, thus increasing their prices. So this is not just ancient history. Government still engages in this nonsense today, yet Bernie Sanders has the audacity to criticize free market capitalism on the one hand, and in the very next breath advocate for more government involvement in the markets the government has already screwed up to a large degree. Same thing happened in healthcare also. In the early 1900s, healthcare was accessible and affordable. People could voluntarily join fraternal societies and lodging practices, and for a few days worth of wages, you could pay for your healthcare for an entire year. The medical professionals in the US and in Britain were upset that the market was allowing the lowly common folk to use their services for so cheap. There were too many doctors, according to them, willing to provide medical services for low prices. So what do? Well, they do what anyone does when they want prices to go higher when they otherwise wouldn't. They go to the government. They get a monopoly on licensing. They get control on the medical industry. And since then, it's ebbed and flowed, but the overall trend is more and more government while prices go higher and higher. So in a sense, Bernie Sanders is not wrong about there being a problem within these industries, but he is dead wrong about where these problems come from and what the solution should be. It's the age-old saying, if you think the problems government creates are bad, just wait until you see their solutions. Well, we've been seeing their solutions for quite some time now, and it should be obvious that they are no solution at all. They are like a drug addict going through withdrawal, convinced that the only solution is to do more drugs. If that is not ignoring and masking an underlying problem, then I don't know what is. And Bernie Sanders is doing no one any favors here by concealing the true problem that has taken root in all of these industries. And he only does this because he either doesn't know or doesn't care, and either one should be unacceptable to everyone. But anyway, like and subscribe, it's a huge help, and you have a good one.